The thing about Zen, Buddhism and Zen, is it says easy and it does hard. Zen meditation is simple but extremely challenging. If I say go up the mountain, climb up the mountain, climbing up is easy. Simple, right? But it's a mountain. It's steep. So, but that doesn't mean it isn't worthwhile. We'll start with a little history. I've had the privilege of presenting Buddhism along with a Hindu for students and people interested in interfaith learning in Nashville on a couple of occasions. And the wonderful lady, Radha Babu from the Hindu temple, from the Sri Ganesha temple, has done this with me. One day, she and I did it for some Overton high school kids, and we did it 8 times that day. They would come to the classroom, we'd make them pick up their shoes and sit, and she would speak about Hinduism for 15 minutes, and I would cover Buddhism and Zen. And it's very natural because Buddhism, the Buddha, lived in India in the mid-6th century BCE, and came out of that tradition. And Buddhism must be understood, I think, in terms of an Indian, a Hindu base. So the wonderful thing that Radha says is that in Hinduism, everything is God, everything is Brahma. You are all Brahma. The floor is Brahma. And they have some main gods, but these are all just different perspectives on the one universal God, on the force. And so you have, for instance, G-O-D, this is cute, it's in English, G-O-D, generator, operator, and destroyer. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And these are just manifestations, and there's millions of other ones. But it is also, you find a god or a representation that resonates with you, and that's your main god. Kind of like Catholics having special saints, having their favorite saints, or whatever. So, Buddha was born a prince by legend in Kosala, which may be on the border between India and Nepal, or could actually be in Nepal, in the foothills of the Himalayas. His father was a king in a city-state. Today we probably call them warlords. He was born in the Shaka clan, which was of the warrior caste, which was the military and political leaders of India in the old caste system. There was a prophecy when he was born that he would either be a great king or a great holy man. And so Daddy did not want son to be a holy man. He gave him a totally sheltered life, military training. The boy had a lot of promise. He was brilliant. He mastered everything he did quickly. And so Daddy was hopeful that he wouldn't go off and be a wandering yogi, one who practices yoga or the paths of finding God and realizing oneness with Brahma, which is the point of the Vedic religions. But the young man was restless, and sometime in his late teens, he and his attendant snuck out of the palace compound. And on this, they went down to the villages because the young Siddhartha Gautama, had never seen what everyday people live like. So, yeah, he was a 1%er. The first thing he saw was a monk who was meditating by the side of the road, and he was naked, and an ascetic, practicing ascetic meditation. And Buddha asked the young man, his attendant, what's going on? So this is a holy man. He's a yogi. He's trying to find oneness with God, and he's stripped away his wealth and his clothes and given everything away, and he's trying to find oneness with Brahma. Okay? Next thing they see is a very old, shriveled up person. A little bit older than me, probably. Wrinkled, bent over, stooped, arthritic. Buddha's like, what's that? He said, that's an old person. Because people that were infirm, not beautiful, sick, had never been allowed around Siddhartha. Sheltered life. So he had explained, we all get old. You know, this is going to happen to all of us. Age comes marching for all of us. All right, so he saw that one. And then he saw a woman who was not old nor young, but she was begging. She was rail thin and dirty and poor and destitute. And he'd never seen poverty like that before. What's wrong with her? Why isn't she wearing nice clothes like all the princesses at the palace do? Why don't you explain that, you know, not everybody's rich. You know, you're kind of lucky. A lot of people live this way. So, and then on the way home, they passed a corpse on the road. And Siddhartha had never seen death. And again, that had to be explained to him. So he was deeply troubled by the way the other people, the rest of the world lived, the rest of the people in his kingdom were living. And he was particularly struck with the yogi and devoting his life and leaving wealth and fame and fortune behind to do a spiritual life. And sometime after that, he couldn't take the pampered palace life anymore. And one night he kissed his young wife and baby son goodbye and slipped out and spent the next 9 years going from teacher to teacher and studying. Supposedly he mastered every meditative technique and mystical technique that they had to offer at the time. He was traveling with 4 friends, and they'd all decided that they would not stop seeking, and they would meditate and what's the word? Not destroy. Ascetic practice is the word that I want. They were going to blank the body. Anyway, punish the body. They were going to try to blend, be absorbed in the pure being, and deny the body and its cravings. So they began to fast for a long time. And the Buddha had fasted, Siddhartha had fasted so long and hard that he passed out. And a milkmaid found him and brought him curds and whey. And he was refreshed, and he said, "Thank you, and I'm never going to do this to my body again." The body is the temple of the spirit, to borrow a common Western Christian term, which the Hindus also would agree with. Other friends, they weren't quite as starting, I guess, but so they saw Siddhartha take sustenance from the girl, and they said, Siddhartha is a fake, and they wrote him off. They were going to keep doing this. So Buddha sat down then after he was refreshed and bathed and put on a fresh robe, and said, he sat down one day under the pipsala tree, touched the earth, and said, "I vow before Brahma and the heavens that I shall not arise from this spot until I have attained enlightenment, till I have seen and found the way, the ultimate reality." And so depending on which version that you use, it was either 9 days or 49 days. On the last night at dawn, last morning at dawn, he looked up and saw the morning star. And he touched the ground again and said, suddenly the image of Scarlett O'Hara comes to mind. God is my witness. Heaven and earth bear witness that I and all creation, all sentient beings have entered nirvana, have attained to nirvana, the non-returning or enlightenment. And we'll get to those terms a little bit later. So he gets up, he refreshed. What he did was that he saw through the veils that our filters and our egos constantly place before our eyes, so that we cannot see things as they are. We cannot accept things as they are, which doesn't mean that you don't work for good, to improve the world, and to ease suffering. By no means. Easing suffering is big in Buddhism. but it does mean that we no longer see ourselves as being separate and cut off from everything else, and all of the anxiety and angst and pain that goes with being a weak little being in a big bad world, because that's not the way it is. All right, so he goes, he finds his friends. At first they don't recognize him, and of course Hollywood does it now, but painters and sculptors have done it for centuries, as far as making this a big theatrical production. I guess he was glowing, but they did not know it was Siddhartha. But they could tell he was different from a long way off. And he came up and said, "Hey guys, I've got something to tell you. You won't believe this." And you look kind of familiar. You've got this amazing, you're radiating peace and joy and serenity. And who are you? And he said, "I'm awake," which is Bodhi in Pali. Pali is related to Sanskrit, ancient language of that part of India. And I'm awake. And so they begin to call him the Awakened One, which is Buddha. Then he preached his first sermon on the Four Noble Truths. And we'll get into that in a minute also. And they were immediately abandoned their self-mortification. Old brain cells here. So they abandoned their path of silly asceticism and self-mortification and followed Buddha. Buddhism is called the middle way because it is neither asceticism nor hedonism. It's practical. It's for humans to do. And we're going to get into this question of, is it a religion or a philosophy? How could it be a religion if it doesn't posit a God or a divinity? And but it's more than a philosophy because we have priests and temples and devotions. You picked the Metta Sutra for the reading this morning. The responsive reading that you did was called the Metta Sutra. Metta is one of the four Brahmaviharas, the four immeasurables in Buddhism. Metta is loving kindness, and this is the loving kindness. You did most of it this morning. The loving kindness sutra, verse or poem, and Upekkha is another one. That's equanimity. Mudita is sympathetic joy, which is really hard. It's being happy that your neighbors have a bigger house and car than you do, or just got a promotion. And the final one is karuna, which is compassion. So those are the four immeasurables. Where was I? Not a religion, but maybe it is. We don't have a God. Buddha, I was reading last week, on last Tuesday night's lesson at the Zen Center. I was reading from the Lankavatara Sutra. And Buddha said several times, in more than one place, I teach people according to their skill and understanding. So I think this is why, at its heart, in Buddhism, there is no God that they talk about. Because if you're committed to whatever is in the universe, which would include God, without defining it or having fixed ideas about him, her, it, or the way things are, if your commitment is to facing reality as it is, then you don't have to worry about whether God is a male or female, or has a beard, or what he likes or dislikes, or who he accepts or doesn't accept. It's a moot point, you know. We have to see with our eyes, hear with our ears, and deal with life on this rock as best we can. So Buddhism is, I don't say atheistic, it is non-theistic. It is non-theistic based, and it certainly isn't anti-theistic. There's a lot of the popular writers today, and I used to really kind of buy into that stuff, because I came from a church background and had lots of baggage. Now that's kind of drifted away, and I feel much more comfortable. So people practicing, as long as they're not beheading people, I don't really care what you do, and whatever makes you feel closer to the rest of humanity, something that you probably, karma is what brings people to doing these things. Buddhists do not really believe in reincarnation, which is a shocker, because we don't believe in a soul. Impermanence, there are three things which I think are more important to understanding Buddhism than even the Four Noble Truths. And that is the three main marks of existence that the Buddha formulated. And that is all phenomena, all things are impermanent. Nothing lasts forever. Someday the Earth's been around a long time. Someday the sun's going to supernova and it's all toast. Someday the sun will be a black hole. And we'll be this big. The Earth will be just a little tiny speck in the middle. It will collapse, the Earth will collapse into something the size of a small golf ball and weigh just as much as it does now. So do we have engineers and physicists in here? They have engineers. Yeah, I knew I would be speaking to something about that. Yeah, so it doesn't last forever. And that's a long time, but there's really no concept of eternity in Buddhism. But there's concepts of things lasting a long, long time. So all things are impermanent. You are not who you were yesterday. Even physically, your body isn't the same as it was 11 months ago. All your cells have been regenerated. And you are what you eat. I'm glad we don't look like what we eat. I like junk food. All things are impermanent. And the two other marks of existence are related. The other thing is that nothing has a self existence. Nothing is independently a self. Buddha said, nothing ever can Am I quoted wrong? Yes, ma'am. Nothing ever has.
There's writing on the back.
No, but that's scribbles.
It's up the other sleeve.
Yeah, it's up the other sleeve.
With the cigarettes.
Rural states. There it is. Bang. No self. Nothing can ever belong to a self, have a self in it, or otherwise be a self.
Could you repeat that?
Nothing can ever. I lost it again. Oh, bad glasses. Nothing can ever belong to a self, have a self in it, or otherwise be a self. We are composites. Human beings are composites. This rug is a composite. It's made up of other parts. And those other parts last a long time, but not this composite. Another way to look at the self is, here's a fist. Where'd it go? Fist? No fist. Body? No body. These atoms were something else, and they'll be something else again. Because all things are impermanent, everything that is in constant flux, constantly changing. The universe is constantly taking its little Lego blocks and making new stuff and tearing it down. again and again. We can observe this and we can see. And finally, this is neat. Now you understand impermanence, and we've talked about no self, emptiness, shunyata in Pali is very similar to no self. The Buddha said, I looked inside, and David Hume in the 1700s, the Scottish philosopher, said the same thing. I've looked inside and I cannot find the self. I only see sensations and perceptions and thoughts. There is no permanent abiding self. And yet, I would use the term self, or I'll say me, you, or whatever, because these are constructs and conveniences of language to help us communicate. But that doesn't mean they're really there. One of my favorite illustrations is the question is not, is there a self? This is from Buddha's Brain, written by two Buddhists. One's a psychiatrist and one's a psychologist. There's a lot of neat stuff about neuroscience in there, the latest findings. The question is not whether the self is real. The question is, what is its nature? Is the self really real, or is it like a unicorn? Representations of unicorns are real, but they themselves, probably not. Yourself can just, it pops up from time to time. We call it ego. When we're stuck into me and mine and protecting our reputation. And by the way, those scandals about me on the internet are not entirely true. And wanting fame and glory and money and comfort and ease and pushing away pain and discomfort and loss of face. We say that's ego, but it's funny. And one of the purposes of our meditation is to let the ego drop away and to observe it with the neutral observing mind, which is Buddha mind, which is really what you are. All right, so we've got emptiness. Everything in the universe is empty. It does not have a self-nature. It is impermanent, constantly changing. And now, the other good one that really puts it together, everything is dependent upon everything else to exist. You weren't created from nothing. Despite what your mom and dad said when you were 6 years old and you asked, where did I come from? The stork didn't drop you, and you started long before the sperm and the egg made contact. When did you begin? You wouldn't be here without everything that happened in the universe making it possible for you to be here. Pretty amazing. There has to be a sun, there has to be earth, there has to be wind, it has to be the exact distance apart and the exact size. So many things had to happen. Your grandparents had to do your ancestors had to all do the right things, at least to live long enough to reproduce. And you are dependent today. Most of us do not grow our own food and make our own clothing. We depend upon the systems that we are in, the ecosystems, the planet being taken care of, in this web of interdependence. And so, interdependent origination is the third mark of all existence. We're all part of that big self. So you have got atoms and subatomic particles that make atoms, that make molecules, that make cells, that make organs, that make your body. And the brain is a function, and the mind is a function of the body. You're part of your family, a bigger self. You're part of a community. You're part of the human race. You're part of you're a high order primate and share characteristics with all primates. And then you have what? Vertebrates? Do you have any biologists in here? You got vertebrates and animalia, the animal kingdom, and life. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Another neat illustration for the self is the ocean. And I like, this is one of the best illustrations for the Buddhist idea of rebirth, which is not reincarnation, because there's no soul, there's no separate thing which jumps from body to body in our cosmology. You have an ocean and waves. A wave appears and is distinct from the other waves. It's still ocean. It disappears. Another wave comes back. It ain't the same wave, is it? So this is what ourselves do. You go back into the ocean of consciousness, which is sounding pretty new agey, so we won't go into that. Time to uncross that leg. All right. Okay. Now, we have these three things of impermanence, no self or emptiness, and interdependent origination. And out of these things, Buddha begins to diagnose the human condition and prescribe a treatment, leading to awakening, seeing through the filters that we've accumulated all of these years. Another wonderful illustration that Radha Babu says is the human mind is a landfill. And people have been dumping stuff on your landfill since you were born. You are not even aware today, probably. Practice helps with this, Zen practice, but you're not even aware today when people back up the old dump truck and throw stuff on there. You had no say over what went into your mind when you were growing up. And you don't have much say now. So you can exercise more, and I think part of maturity is realizing, I don't want to put this in my mind anymore. So in Zen practice, hopefully we erect a big sign saying no dumping, and start cleaning out little corners of it, right back and forth. So the Buddha, on his awakening, the first sermon in Deer Park with his 4 or 5 guys was the Four Noble Truths. And that is, to be alive is to suffer. Now, the West has done a bad job of translating dukkha, the word dukkha. And it doesn't mean pain. It literally means dis-ease, disease, dis-ease. That never satisfied. I'm never satisfied. I always want something more. Anything I do that brings me pleasure, it's gone and I want more. I'm constantly trying to avoid things which are that I think are unpleasant, and want things that I can't have. So there's this dissatisfaction to life. To be alive and to be human is to have this condition. So to be alive is to suffer. Suffering has a cause. This is the second noble truth. There is a cause of suffering. And that cause is, number 3, attachment. We get attached to things. Attached to this, number 1, the idea of a separate self that's separate from everybody else and has to meet its own needs, frequently at the expense of others. This what we would call ego, the big head. Tunnel vision, seeing only what I want to see. And the 4th noble truth, or maybe it's the 3rd or 4th, is there is a way of freeing oneself from this suffering. There is a path of liberation, and it is the Eightfold Path. The Noble Eightfold Path. The Noble Eightfold Path is simply living a life according to right view, right intent, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right meditation, and right mindfulness. Right means constructive and appropriate for the moment, for the situation. All of this is with a view to waking up and seeing past the ego and the false self that's always wanting something, that's always nagging. So again, right view, right intent, right speech, right action, right livelihood. So probably shouldn't be an international arms seller or a gangbanger. It's okay to work for the government though. You tell them what I do?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
But now they know.
Now they know. There's a beautiful history of by the way, Zen is known as Zen in Japan. It came from China, where it was Chan, and Chan is simply the Chinese attempt at dhyana, which is meditation in Pali. It's a meditation-based Buddhist practice or whatever. There's a long history in China and Japan of minor government officials, you know, being practitioners in the way. So, and I'm a very, very minor government official. So we have the Eightfold Path, and meditation, and there are a lot of secular people are taking Zen type meditation, and the other very, very cousin of Zen, which is Vipassana, Theravada meditation, out of context. And you know, to me it's a big controversy. It's like, I'm going to meditate to be calmer and have a clearer mind so I can be a better rapacious capitalist. So I can make more money and get all the cheese, you know. And I'm like, you know, because I'll just practice mindfulness and the right meditation, and everything will be okay. You know, and I think that was part of what the samurai did, because they adopted Zen. But again, it's like judging people in the South in the Civil War. You're born into that culture. What are you supposed to do? You do your best, you know, and you try to do with honor and dignity. And you're born into medieval Japan and the samurai culture. You serve a lord. It was your duty. You could die at any minute. So Zen practice, you know, helped them. But I think to achieve peace and joy, which Buddha promised, we need to eat the whole enchilada. You need all the other. You know, if you just do meditation, then you're practicing 1/8, 12. You're getting 12% of what the Buddha came to bring you, because each one of those parts of practice inform the other parts in effect. Because again, I can't say this enough. Everything is connected. It's all stuck together. It's all woven together. Each thing you do informs the next thing. So the Noble Eightfold Path is important. And so we need to have a view with the view to waking up and seeing beyond our delusions. And delusions and ignorance in Buddhism, it's like sin in Christianity. You know, you want to work on those. You want to work on those delusions. And the delusions are: number one, that I'm separate from everybody else. Number two, that I'm permanent. Number three, that I'm the center of the universe. These are all delusional ways of looking at the world. Why do we have them? I believe in science. I agree with science. I'm a secularist in that regard. So I believe in natural selection and evolution. And I think Buddha, his contribution to philosophy and world thought is that he saw through the unfortunate side effects and the tricks that evolution played upon us. We are evolved to be looking out for number one: nervous, anxious, depressed people. If you make it past childbearing and creating years, it's a long, hard road. You're going to have heart disease. You're going to wear out. Because to survive, we had to be constantly looking out for what was in the trees, what was going to come up in the jungle and get us. Human society and culture, you know, is just like high school. You've got popular ones and unpopular ones so that we can see who the leaders are, because we're herd animals and we need to follow the leaders. Even though you look at the upcoming round of presidential elections, and it's going to get really crazy. And I will not watch commercial TV for a long time. But all of this stuff is like, So to survive and breathe, I I've got to have anxiety and depression and be nervous all the time and always on the lookout, always watching my back. Yeah, but the Buddha found a way to get beyond that. And it's dropping in meditation and in practice all the other steps of the Eightfold Path, applying yourself to seeing through those delusions and dropping them. So a short history lesson again. Buddha has this awakening. It takes off like a wildfire in India for a few centuries. I don't think the Indians, for one thing, it negated the caste system. And we've seen how hard it is to negate the caste system in America, haven't we? We have one. It's economic, some racial, some economic, but you know, that we are evolved to have a caste system. It's kind of that hierarchy. Who are the bosses? Who's going to be the winners? Who's going to be the losers? And so it negated the caste system because there's no separation. There's no difference between untouchables and Brahmas. And boy, the Brahma caste didn't like that. So it does spread into India. It actually, the Heart Sutra, which is like our Lord's Prayer, was actually written because it's recited every day. And that's a wonderful sutra, because how many world religions have as one of their major texts a text that negates all the major teachings of that religion? Which the Heart Sutra does. All dharmas are empty, are impermanent. They neither arise nor cease. Dharma is truth. Dharma is the truth of the moment that is revealed, that seeing reality is meeting the Dharma, which is constantly changing. All dharmas are empty. They neither arise nor cease, are neither tainted nor pure. There is no form, no feeling, no sensation, no perception. And it goes on and on. There is no old age, there is no birth, no old age and death. At the absolute level, the way the universe looks at it, it's all just passing states. So the Heart Sutra was actually written in what is today Afghanistan, in the Hindu Kush kingdom. That part of Afghanistan, that's why the Taliban fired cannons at the beautiful statues and destroyed them of the Buddha at that time. So Buddhism goes from northern India, spreads up into Afghanistan, down into the continent, over to Sri Lanka, over to Burma, Thailand, and Vietnam. And the founder of our particular sect, Bodhidharma, an Indian monk, comes to China sometime in the 4th or 5th century CE, Common Era. And he brought what would become chanting. Now Buddhism was already there because Chinese had traded all over the place, all over East Asia, and we're familiar. And he meets the emperor, finds out this famous Buddhist monk from India is in town, and he invites him to an audience. And the Emperor Wu says to him, he's really gratified because he's already been a patron of Buddhism. He's built temples. He's given money away for good Buddhist causes. And he says, how much merit have I gained by doing this? And Bodhidharma says, and he's always shown as a bald-headed guy with a thick beard and bug eyes, says, no merit, nothing holy. And he says, who is standing before me? Who are you? He answers several questions like that, which was kind of off-putting to the emperor. And the Bodhidharma says, basically, I have no idea. I have no one going nowhere. And so the emperor was kind of upset, and Bodhidharma left, spent the next 9 years in a cave, staring at a wall, which is where my school gets the way that we sit. We stare at a wall when we sit. And it was the beginning of Zen. Legend has it that he founded the Shaolin Monastery, which is where Kung Fu came from, but that's a legend. So many schools of Buddhism take place in China. You've got Buddhist schools that are big on studying philosophy, reading sutras and memorizing them and talking about esoteric things. You have schools that do a lot of good work in social Buddhism. But Chan was the school that emphasized individual effort for waking up, usually involving meditation. In the 11th or 12th century, it had already jumped the Sea of Japan and come to Japan. And the 800s or 900s, there were several of the same schools, but there wasn't a strong meditation school in Japan, when the founder of our lineage, Dogen Zenji, age of 25, 26, traveled to the mainland China and began to visit different schools and monasteries. And he finally found what resonated with him in the Kaidong school, which involves, our practice involves sitting on a cushion, staring at a wall with your eyes open. We're going to do that in a minute. You won't have the wall, but that's okay. And just being. It's just sitting, and it's called in Japanese shikan taza, which is just sitting. Zazen means Zen meditation. Za is sitting in Japanese. Dogen brings this back to Japan. Same time, the Rinzai school, the Linchi school that works with the koans. Koans are what is the sound of one hand clapping. Does a dog have Buddha nature moo? The koans are stories of famous Zen masters, Chan masters in China. Usually it involves an interchange with the student and a wordplay. These Zen masters go back from like 500 or 600 AD to 900,000 AD. And the stories were gathered sometime early 11, 1200s into books. And they began to give them to students to study while they sat on the cushion, and they would have to go to the master and ask for their understanding. They're not puzzles that you can solve. They're not logically solved. It's just a meditation point. And at this point, how much time do I have? 5 minutes?
We're over.
Okay.
So we can do the sitting if you want. Or
Yeah,
we
let's
can
do the
it in a
sitting.
circle.
Let's do the sitting.
Encore. On me.
All right.
We're over.
What I want you to do, we're going to do Zazen. So I need you to sit up in your chair, if you would, feet flat on the floor. If you could sit forward in your chair, I want your back to be arched and your belly out a little bit, so that the lungs can really get full. All right. Now, you can put your hands on your knees. In our form of Zen, we use the universal mudra, which is the right hand on the lap, left hand on top, on the palm. Stretch your hands apart until the thumbs are barely touching. Okay, and again, arch that back so you can get the lungs full. You're going to breathe with your diaphragm. Your head is erect, ears are over your shoulders. Place your tongue gently against the roof of your mouth. This actually helps to cut off words, because you're going to practice observing your thinking. Breathing and observing your thinking. Keep your eyes open or half open. Why do we do this? Because if you close your eyes, the movie theater of the mind begins to show pictures. And so the purpose of this is to be in this room right now, breathing this air, smelling these smells, hearing the sounds on the highway. Right now, the sound of my voice. Do a sweep of your senses. What am I seeing? And try not to exercise any discrimination or judgment. Let things be as they are. And we'll follow our breath for just a minute. I'll start the timer. Now, to follow the breath, you can count your breaths, but just observe, really pay attention to the air coming in your nostrils, your chest filling, your diaphragm contracting. Now the belly in breath, the belly gets small, Slow exhale through the nose, the nostrils. Midsection is expanding as it's pushing the air out. The Buddha's basic teaching of meditation was breathing in. I'm aware that I'm breathing in.